What's up, everybody? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Interesting news coming out of DTCC as far as speaking on their testing regarding Ethereum. If you're not aware, DTCC deals in derivatives, and they are a behemoth. So just to give you a little bit of scope, they processed 2.3 quadrillion in securities transactions in 2020. Quadrillion, $2.3 quadrillion in securities transactions. And they have been certainly building out a parallel distributed ledger technology system that obviously will interface with digital assets at some point in time. But it's going to be, there's a lot of different things that are going on, and, there's always verbiage that we talk about, but their goal essentially is to get to T+1 settlement. I believe that is by 2024. And then obviously after T+1, it's T+0, which is instantaneous real-time gross settlement. But this speech came out a few days ago. This is February 28th. This is Jennifer Peeve. She's the managing director and head of strategy / business development at DTCC. I find it very interesting how Ethereum is talked about within this podcast. And, this is kind of on the coattails of a lot of the crazy things we've seen regarding consensus and JP Morgan essentially owning critical infrastructure within the Ethereum network. And that's through Infura, one of two organizations they own critical infrastructure in. Infura actually basically did an update based on sanctions and eliminated users in Venezuela from having access to their MetaMask accounts, which is scary as shit, right? But this is really interesting, so I'm going to play this real quick for you guys, and just I found it very valuable because this just alludes me to believe that, these networks dealing in high utility that are not Ethereum certainly still have a role to play within these financial ecosystems. And she actually even laughs when she talked about using Ethereum to mint a quote-unquote security, and I think she slips and says mainnet instead of testnet a couple of times within this. So we know what they're building, and this is just more confirmation for me that networks dealing in utility are going to play a role. So I will let you guys listen real quick, and then we'll move on.
There's been some commentary around, obviously, on the performance that you've noted as you're running more and more transactions through the system. How have you found that? Because it is a new technology, particularly on the public side. Just curious, and obviously, how do you see that playing out?
So it's a great question. When we first started working with the prototype and looking at public Ethereum blockchain, and the team brought up a demo and they said, okay, this is where we're going to mint the security on the public Ethereum on mainnet. I'm like, okay, and so it was testnet, but so we effectively do it, and we're waiting. I'm like, and I was like, I'm not understanding why this is better than what we have today in our financial services, right? But look, I understand there's, technology evolves so quickly, today. And private markets are very unlike public markets, where we're not talking about high throughput at this point, right? We are, the transactions are secondary market, the liquidity is low right now, right? The transactions are not to where many people would like them to be, but they're definitely not anywhere close to what the public markets generate. And so I think there's a lot of room to grow. And I think the technology will grow with that, right? Ultimately, and clients will make the decision. Is public Ethereum the blockchain for them? Maybe they start there and they think, they may have their reasons for picking public Ethereum, and maybe they determine this isn't the one that's really going to get this market moving because, of performance degradation, latency, maybe it's even cost, right? Maybe because of if there's too much volume transaction flow on the blockchain, it increases your transaction costs, and clients just don't love that. So I think there's a lot that's still to be determined. I don't personally want to be the firm that says you can't use this particular blockchain, you have to use this one. I like being agnostic and letting the clients decide what's actually best for them and for their investors or clients themselves. So ultimately, Our goal will be to ensure that the latency between us, the integration between us and the blockchain is sound, is secure, and as efficient as it possibly can be. And that's where, that's ultimately what our focus is going to be.
DTCC and their clients certainly aren't going to be paying $2,000 in gas to mint a pair of sweatpants in the metaverse. They're dealing in institutional grade volumes to the extent of, $2.3 quadrillion in 2020, and they need institutional grade utility. And, it's just very, very interesting, the phraseology within that. And I mean, it's still crazy even to talk about, right? And I think she did probably slip a couple of times about saying mainnet versus testnet. But, they are certainly going to be using digital assets, and they're going to be using the most efficient digital assets. And they're going to be looking at things in the most agnostic way as possible. This is why we see all these large institutions trying to quote-unquote future-proof or proof of concept test with a multitude of different entities within this space, right? Because there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. It's going to be, which asset facilitates the most utility for a given use case within these networks that have existed for decades, right? It just makes sense, and I thought this was very, very interesting. This is on the coattails kind of this, which was a few days ago. Ethereum blasted as Trojan horse for tyranny. Following the MetaMask scandal, MetaMask shoots itself in the foot by blocking certain jurisdictions. Now a dive deeper into this reveals why, and that is because the Ethereum ecosystem is in bed with JP Morgan. Now this is this Project North Star. Essentially, through Consensus, and one arm of Consensus basically was rebranded as another with fundraisers involved, and JP Morgan certainly playing a large role within those fundraising aspects. Infura is what this really ties into, though. Infura is a Web3 backend and infrastructure as a service provider, offering a range of services and tools for blockchain developers. This includes the Infura API suite. Infura is owned by Consensus. Moving down through here, though, the brutal truth. If MetaMask/Infura is open and willing to block countries like Venezuela by IP addresses, it's only a matter of time until they are forced by regulators to censor individual people's IP addresses. We need alternatives immediately, hoping that Alchemy and others do not do this. So this is what's more so concerning. If given sanctions come out, or if conflicts of interest come out, that essentially is basically saying that the decentralization mechanisms that we are supposed to be seeing are not there. And there is still kind of the invisible hand that is moving this market in a certain way, or potentially going to have the opportunity or the ability to restrict users' access based on IP address. Even when we tie in digital identity and things like that, I mean, it gets very, very, very scary where this could potentially go. Brad Mills essentially stating Ethereum is a Trojan horse for tyranny. Consensus owns Infura and MetaMask, and JP Morgan, UBS, and MasterCard own Consensus. 99% of Ethereum virtual machine transactions run through Consensus. DeFi is captured by venture capitalists and banks. I don't agree with the Bitcoin government resistance stance that he's stating here, especially given the green initiatives that we all know are flushing out over this decade. Ethereum is not even insider resistance. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of this Consensus lawsuit that we can see here, and I'll post these. This was a deal essentially eliminating CAG, which is Consensus AG, and moving it into a new entity called Consensus Software Incorporated. This was a couple of years ago, 2020 deal. But as things start to come to light, you start to see that there are a lot of hands in the pot, and there's probably a lot of non-transparency going on as far as what these communities think that they're dealing in. And I just find it interesting because we can even look here. This is liquidity management and a multi-currency corridor network. This is a document that came out from the Bank of France in late 2021 in November, and we can see the Monetary Authority of Singapore, shown in here. We can see the Central Bank of France shown in here. We can see the JP Morgan Cloud in Singapore, and we could see Consensus Quorum. And this is kind of how this infrastructure, the high-level network topology would be working. And there's the rabbit hole goes deep with Ethereum, my friends, and I try not to present a ton, but this was very interesting to me over the past day or two within kind of what was going on with Ethereum. And it's even just, it's comical too. You'll see why it's comical in a second here. But yeah, there are some huge powerhouses houses within this multi-currency corridor. JP Morgan Onyx, like I said, Monetary Authority of Singapore, Bank of France. We saw Consensus up above. This is funny though, right? So this is in 2018. Joseph Lubin, co-founder of Ethereum, essentially saying Ethereum is a few years away from profound decentralization. And I just imagine Dr. Evil from Austin Powers going, profound decentralization, because obviously you're going the wrong way. All of these deals are loaded with just nonsensical rhetoric. And like I said, there's a lot of old school money and hands in the pot. I can even think Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan stating to people that, he was going to fire employees in 2017 if they were investing into Bitcoin. And we see how deeply integrated JP Morgan is with their hands in the pot in the crypto space, essentially trying to launch their own coin, their own network, all this other nonsense. So be very careful. It's just crazy to me, the rhetoric that we're presented versus what's actually going on, which eludes me just to say even further, it's much more valuable for us to watch what these individuals are doing instead of what they are saying to us, because they have lied for years and years and years and years and years. And when a new asset class, the first asset class in hundreds of years, is brought to fruition, do you think they're going to be truthful and honest about where this space goes? Or do you think that they're going to try to get as much of a slice of the pie as possible so that they can maintain the power hold that they've held forever? I would have to go with the latter, right? I'm more of a realist. So it's very important for us to try to innovate and do things within DeFi for transparency mechanisms and try to benchmark that, because if we don't, they're going to bastardize it into whatever they want it to be, and it's going to be very, very, very scary. Even dealing with Consensus right here, China's blockchain network adds CBDC payment layer, which is, they're dealing with Consensus as a tech partner. This is January in 2021. On a little bit of a lighter note, I did see this, but this is also gigantic news. And for anybody that's dealing in NFTs out there, non-fungible tokens, they're not just JPEGs, they're not just artwork. There's certainly value in artwork, and I respect any artist out there actually doing the work and trying to create something that empowers themselves. NFTs represent a much larger piece of this ecosystem than a lot of people are thinking right now, because I would actually even argue to an extent that they could be much larger than unit of account based assets, which is peer-to-peer payment mechanisms, things like that, because NFTs offer programmability in a way that we haven't really seen, and we haven't even seen the fully fleshed out value proposition of what that would even look like in a few years, but we can start digging into what that may appear to be as far as even digital ID and health records and all these different things. This is MUFG. MUFG is just a giant bank, right? I believe that they're a part of that Japan Bank Consortium. We've seen many documents. I've seen Ripple mentioned in MUFG documents. They're a tier 1 bank. They're huge. They're collaborating now with Animica Brands, KK. So MUFG's consolidated subsidiary, MUFG Bank, today announcing, this is March 3rd, that it has reached a basic agreement with Animica Brands related to the NFT business. Now, why I think this is big is because this is a tier 1 bank, right? There are lots of other tier 1 banks, and if the first domino falls, what do you think is going to happen next? And I will not be surprised at all if we see in a very, very short time frame that a lot of other banking institutions start kind of trying to tie in with gamification, metaverse, or the NFT ecosystems. It's just the nature of the beast. We start seeing the way that these things kind of cascade and start rolling downhill, and the snowball only gets bigger. And it just is what it is, and this is just gigantic. So yeah, kudos to Animica Brands. This is big. I've seen their name absolutely everywhere. Last but not least, companies hiring for cryptocurrency jobs. So if you don't think crypto is a big deal, if you don't think that blockchain is sustainable, if you don't think digital assets are a new asset class and have a stronghold within the market currently right now, just look at what organizations out there right now and who they are hiring. This is companies hiring for crypto jobs, so kudos to Blockworks. the NFL, Nike, Hulu, Visa, Meta, which is Facebook rebranded, Apple, Nvidia, Disney, PayPal, Google, Fidelity, Amazon, Microsoft, JP Morgan, MasterCard, State Street, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and that's a short list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you when I talk to you. Later.